Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of ASKability. My name is Nico Meyering. I use he, him pronouns. If you're joining us today from the low vision or blind community, or if you're just listening to this rather than watching it, I'm a white man with parted blonde hair. I'm wearing brown and blue glasses. I'm seated wearing a purple flannel shirt in front of some bookcases, some empty, some full. I am honored today to be joined by Kimberly. Kimberly, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly Kwon. I am an Asian American woman, and I am with short brown hair with metal red rimmed glasses, and I am sitting with a background of a theater that is with white and gold trim, and it's ancient, and it's the background of a Apple store in downtown Los Angeles. I am an executive leadership coach, and I am a woman who is in her 50s, born with cerebral palsy, and living with chronic illness. I was diagnosed with lupus at 28, so I have invisible and visible disabilities.
Thank you for that quick intro. I'm already learning new things. Kimberly, tell us, what access features or tools do you currently use in your daily life, and how do they help you?
Well, personally, I love having an iPad, and I've loved having an iPad forever because
Really?
of the Zoom feature.
Oh, okay.
Because on an iPad, you can easily, with your fingers, zoom the text larger, and you can adjust it very smoothly to exactly how you want to see it. I have poor vision. I have astigmatism in my one eye. And so I've always had poor vision. And when the iPad came out, that was like, awesome. I could adjust text and do everything. And when I was working, of course, that's not possible. You have to do with the screen as you want. And, sometimes on a laptop, you can't do it that easily. There's shortcuts to Zoom on different texts. And so I do love that accessibility to change the size of your screen and the text on a screen now with computers. And that's a daily thing for me. It's a daily thing for anyone with vision issues. Whether they're diagnosed officially with a disability, it comes with age too. I know many people at my age that we have poor vision or harder vision, and we have to do bifocals, and then we go like this on the computer.
Yeah.
You see that, and people don't realize disability is a part of life.
That's really important to understand. Disability is part of life. And indeed, what is more human than our relationship to our bodies, which, much like any other relationship, constantly changes. Also, stigmatism, buddy, hey.
Yeah.
So I see you in that. And I don't use like an iPad myself, but my Kindle app on my smartphone is a real lifesaver. Whether I'm reading prose books, I can increase the font there. Or if I'm reading comic books, there's a function that goes panel by panel, which to me, at least, is much more like accessible and immersive than reading page by page.
Yeah, I agree. With Kindle, I love the ability to do what I need to do as far as size, as far as lighting, even the ability to dim it at night.
Oh, yes. True.
when things get annoying, or the other things I like doing is closed captioning more and more. With YouTube videos, because at night, sometimes I like looking at things at night when I'm relaxing, but I don't want the sound. The sound starts to bug me. Or maybe somebody has an annoying voice. So then I like using the closed captioning feature in my daily life. I used to walk with a cane when I was living with chronic illness, and I was on disability for more than 15 years. I had difficulty walking and standing for long periods of time. And so I used to walk with a cane all the time. I don't need to walk with a cane anymore. I worked on, it took a long time. I don't need to walk with a cane anymore. But if I walk too much, right? If I do too much, yes, I miss my cane. So sometimes I'm like, oh, shoot, I should have had my cane with me. Because I get tired and it gets harder to walk, and I walk slower. And having a cane sometimes helps me to stabilize and walk a little bit faster. So those are some of the things that I use in my life now.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's very comprehensive. I want to now kind of flip that question on its head. If I could give you a magic paintbrush or a magic wand and your will became manifest, what access features or tools would make the biggest improvement in your life and how? So if you had this magic wand, what access features or tools would you pop into existence for your use?
Oh my goodness. Okay. There are so many things. I would want more chairs everywhere.
Okay.
Okay. Like literally, for example, at the mall, you used to have a lot of I don't know, malls redesign themselves all the time. And sometimes there's chairs everywhere, which is great because then I can stop and sit, and stop and then sometimes they have railings on the top floors to walk with, and sometimes they don't. But things have changed, design change. I don't know. Somebody says,
Right.
we don't need as many chairs here and there. We don't need as many things. We don't want people sitting around. I don't know why they do it. And they get rid of chairs, and then it's harder because then I have no place to sit. I know during the pandemic, Disneyland got some press because they got rid of some chairs because they wanted more room for the crowd, more social distancing. Right. So they got rid of a lot of seating areas that were outdoors. And I remember reading, well, I'm not going anytime soon. So but for the people who are going, who are used to having places to sit all around when they're going to theme parks, when they need the rest, right? That would be annoying that all of a sudden all these chairs and places to sit in this theme park disappeared for social distancing purposes, which I understood, but people don't realize how the simplest things can help people with hidden disabilities or visible disabilities. In my case, when I walk, you can tell I have cerebral palsy. So people definitely stare, but it means so much to have chairs all over the place. Like I would have more chairs, I would have more railings everywhere, wider areas to walk. Even though I don't have a wheelchair, I notice that sometimes things get really narrow and it's hard, and people, they want to avoid me. They don't want me to fall. I don't want to trip over them. And if you don't have wide enough spaces for people to walk around you or that sort of thing, it can be challenging, especially when it gets crowded during the holidays.
Definitely. I echo your sentiments there. And I really love how that answer provided a very tangible, concrete benefit that isn't a pie in the sky moonshot, right? Like it's a very concrete example. It would be very feasible to just set down more chairs, but
yeah,
what can we do?
Yeah, I don't know. Something about design, right? It's accessible. It's a simple thing that people can do, even in offices, right? In workspaces, to have more chairs, and especially if you have big campuses for workplaces. Some of these big places have huge campuses, right? And you have from building to building. I used to work for a big utility company, and they had big main corporate office. There was lots of walking in between the buildings, and there were never any chairs or anything or railings or anything to walk around. So if you were walking, I just knew, okay, I'm going to have to make it from this point to this point. There's no rest stops for me. And I couldn't take a break or anything. So it's challenging. Another thing would be more bathrooms, honestly, more bathrooms. There's not enough bathrooms anymore in places. I don't know why. It seems like, and I love the idea of private stalls, single stalls, right? So that we have privacy, and the fact that a lot of them are gender fluid. I love that. But again, there's still not enough. When you have single stalls, there's not enough stalls for everybody with all their different needs.
Right.
There's not enough disabled stalls for wheelchairs. There's not enough stalls for women anyway. There's way more line of women waiting in the bathroom. And it's harder sometimes to plan things when there's only single stalls. So I wish there was more options and more bathrooms overall. in places too.
What I hear you saying is you wish there were more accessible, inclusive, and expansive public spaces.
Exactly. Just that would be my massive magic wand. Please, let's do that. Because then I would do it more. I would honestly be able to go out more and know,
Sure.
okay, there's a lot of people who are with hidden disabilities, with chronic illnesses
Yeah.
that put them on medications like diuretics. I was on diuretics for years. And so I knew where every bathroom was for a long time, at every mall, at every place I had to. And some places we couldn't go because there wasn't enough bathrooms for me to walk to fast enough or whatever. It was just too hard to get everywhere with the medications that I was on. And now my kidneys are trained to pee, even though I'm not on diuretics. It's like, okay, we have to pee. And so, even now I'm like, okay, when I plan things, I'm like, how far is the bathroom? And, where's the rest? Where can I sit and rest? And all these different things that people don't realize, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
If we only knew.
Yeah. Much like how one does not miss breathing until they're being strangled.
Yeah, exactly.
Valid. Tell me, Kimberly, how are disabled people included or excluded in your community? Are there people or groups that are advocating for better inclusion, or, going back to our original questions, better design?
I think in recent years, there are more,
Okay.
advocates like yourself and like me on social media and different things talking about their disability experiences, right? And I'm grateful for social media for that. However, in real life, the first time I met other people with cerebral palsy was on social media on LinkedIn just in the last few years.
Okay.
My whole life. I'm 53 this year as of yesterday. So imagine growing up and not meeting other people with cerebral palsy. And I saw a couple people walk like me, when I went to the zoo a couple years ago, and I was like, ooh, I think that person has cerebral palsy. Wow, that's cool. Right. But I didn't have the guts to go up to that person and stop them. They were busy with family and stuff. But like when I joined LinkedIn recently, I was like, so suddenly I met all these people with cerebral palsy, and it was awesome to meet other people with cerebral palsy. But in real life, have I seen more disabled people at work in corporate and nonprofit America? No. Have I seen people at church? Because I used to be a pastor. Okay. So churches are nonprofits. Churches do not have the ADA laws that corporations have.
Yeah.
And I did not grow up knowing anybody that looked like me or talked like me or even had any disability. I was the only one. And I don't know if there was an element of shame, because culturally in Asian cultures, having a disability has an element of shame. So maybe they didn't bring their disabled kid to church. But even in leadership, I have been discriminated against because I was disabled in the church. Because I've literally had an interview saying, well, how many sick days do you need? What? Like,
Yikes.
what?
Yeah.
Right?
Big red flag.
Big red flag. Like, my answer was the same as you. How many sick days do you need? I literally had a person, I was hired through their son to be a youth pastor when I was in seminary years ago. And son loved me, the kids loved me. And then I went to go pick up my first check with the dad who was the pastor. And he was like, he didn't realize I was disabled. And he was like, and then he asked me a couple weird questions, which I dismissed. And then he's like, well, our budget kind of changed. I don't know, my son told you. And there was an original salary posted for, per month. And he cut it in half. And he goes, so I'm going to give you a different check right now. And I hope you, and I'm like, I'm sorry. No.
Right.
And I quit. And the only thing that made sense was because of the questions he asked, right? And the conversation we had was because he suddenly realized I was disabled, right? So it was disappointing.
To say the least,
to
yes.
say the least. Yeah, it was really disappointing. But, so in real life, how are we excluded? Different ways. Different ways where I've seen it excluded, even in the coaching community, right? You see, we don't always know who's disabled, right? Because we don't always disclose our invisible disabilities. But you don't see in the coaching community a lot of disability representation. You don't see even a lot of discussion about that with coaching. When you see coaching videos on YouTube, for example, they don't have closed captioning, right? When you see a lot of coaching programs, when you get certification, none of it's closed caption, none of it is set up for people with different abilities to learn. There's never any sign language interpretation, that kind of thing. So I do see a lack in that. I think the disabled community, with all the diversity, equity, inclusion, which I love, we're still the last often thought about. Accessibility is the last thing thought about. And I understand that technology hasn't caught up till most recently about accessibility and different things and designers. And I understand, but we're catching up. And I think it's time to start being more intentional about inclusion with the disability community. Even with advocacy, how are we excluded? With all the politics going on and everything, and rallies and marches and things that have happened, I haven't been able to participate because there was no, like, the planning. It's a lot of walking. It's a lot of stuff. There's no places for us. Okay, can I meet you here? Or can you, how can I participate? I wasn't even asked, like, when, for example, the Women's March years ago, it was like, I wanted to volunteer. And they were like, I told them I was living with chronic illness at the time. I couldn't be in meetings in person. And they were like, well, we meet in person and you have to be active. And I'm like, but I could help with phone calls. I could help with things that postcards. I could, but they're like, but we have to meet in person. That way we get to know you and And I was like, this was years ago, a long time ago. Leadership has changed since, but I don't think people have, until the pandemic, people didn't realize how much of a resource disabled people can be, how much we can do at home, how much we can do virtually, how much we can participate. Virtual events has made such a difference for the disabled community to get involved. People with immune compromise, people who are more introverted and have, on the spectrum and different things, and would rather do things from home and not have to be in a crowd. I just think there are ways that have gotten better, but I still think we have a long way to go.
I would agree with you. Absolutely. I'm so sorry that you have a personal history with exclusion and with, like, quiet discrimination, right? Quiet quitting when I was quiet discrimination.
Yeah. It's part of, I think it's part of how things have changed too, right? Back then, you didn't want to speak up back then about your disability. Not that you want to do it now either. A lot of people aren't comfortable. I know that they're still not comfortable disclosing their disability, but back then it was really not good to disclose. I couldn't hide it. You just saw it when I walked. But I think what I struggled with when I was working before I did my job now, what I struggled with was, how much do I have to prove myself that I'm just as good as anyone else, right? And so I would overdo it, burnout, overdo it to prove myself. Look, I'm just as good as anybody else. Being disabled doesn't mean I can't. Disability is not a bad word to me. It took me a long time to embrace that. It doesn't mean I can't. It just means I do it differently. And that's what accommodations and accessibility is about.
Right.
Just help me get the work done differently. It doesn't have to be done the way you think.
This is a really important thing to keep in mind for managers, supervisors, and simply peers alike.
Yeah.
This is
And ask us.
Mm.
It's not hard to have the conversation.
This is very poignant. Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
This brings me to my last question. How would you specifically benefit from greater inclusion? If you could look into the future and you saw a future that was 100% inclusive, how would you yourself benefit?
Oh, you know, one of the hardest things I think I've struggled with in my life, and I know everybody able-bodied or disabled struggle with this, is feeling seen, heard, and appreciated and celebrated,
Yes.
right? Everyone struggles with that. But I think being born disabled, this is what we have to deal with from the beginning. Feeling invisible, feeling like they don't see us, they either talk around us, even though we're in front of them, or they pretend our disability isn't there and says, "Oh, you're so inspirational." They only hear us when we're inspirational. And when we are struggling, they're like, "Oh, be positive," right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's gaslight our disability. let's gaslight our disability and pretend it doesn't exist and we're not struggling, only if we're positive and we overcame it, right? I think it would change the conversation, and it would allow us to be seen as more human, and it would help our confidence levels, help our ability to just heal inside with those struggles that everyone struggles with, but in a different way. Because this is part of my life. It's part of what I've struggled with all my life, feeling seen, heard, celebrated. Tired of feeling invisible when we're right in front of them.
I mean, you seem like a hard person to not notice, so you should not feel invisible at all. Well, no one should.
Right. Thank you.
Of course, of course. And I also appreciate that you mentioned my least favorite blood type, B positive.
Thank you. I may have to steal that in a future conversation.
You may absolutely go ahead.
Yeah, because, that's another thing, being positive. What I always say is positive coexists with a negative. You think of a battery, right? A battery does not work without both. You cannot work without both. And part of what I think is hard about the able-bodied community with the disabled community is the disabled community reminds you that you're human and that you're not perfect, right? That our bodies can be messed up, that things do change, right? And that pain does exist. There are things that are going to be a pain in the butt, that are going to be challenging. And what disability also reminds me of, with the positive and negative, there's positive and negatives about disability. I would not be who I am and as resilient as I am and the person that I am without all the challenges that I've had to navigate, without all the plot twists. To be able to think outside of the box, to be able to find different solutions, to be able to do things differently, that makes me who I am. And I learned those lessons with my disability. We are an asset to any community. We are an asset to any job. We are an asset to any team. We are not just a negative. We are also a positive.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course, as we begin to close, I want to give you a chance now to talk about where people can find you online. If you have anything you want to brag about, like, this is your chance, man, go at it.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Take your soapbox.
Wow. I'm on LinkedIn mostly.
Okay.
That's my platform of choice right now. So you can find me, look up Kimberly Kwon, Los Angeles, California on LinkedIn and reach me there. I have a website. It's www.resilientleadersolutions.com. You can find me there as well. I am on Instagram. It's at Coach Kimberly Kwon. And yes, I joined Twitter. I may leave it now, but we'll see. It's a fun thing for me just to occasionally go in there. It's at Kimchi Coach.
Okay.
So kimchi is a side dish, and it's Korean and it's spicy, and the Kim is Kimberly and the Chi is life force in Chinese medicine. So one of my dear nephews named me the Kimchi Coach. So
Aw.
yeah, so I'm Kimchi Coach on Twitter, and and then at Coach Kimberly Kwon on Instagram, but mainly I'm on LinkedIn. So find me there or at my website, www.resilientleadersolutions.com.
Kimberly, thank you for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.